Good evening, everyone. And today I'm going to take you through a journey of sustainability. Some of you may already know the connection between sustainability and climate change and some of the more pressing issues of today. But how can you take apart this problem and be part of the solution? Come follow along with me and you'll find out. So here are some items I made from leftover newspapers and cardboard boxes. I used to hoard a lot of these when I was a kid. And now fast forward 15 years later, this is me a few months ago, still hoarding trash. Apparently I haven't changed much since I was a kid. But even though I went through some time where I wasn't really sure what to do in life, and especially how I could contribute to sustainability, reflecting back on some of my past interests and seeing what put a smile on my face, that really helped me find my place. And for that I'm ever grateful that my parents let me have my own way and discover my path for myself. So let me tell you the story. I got into paper mache and making model cars after this design and technology class back in year 3. So some folks of over here from Gateway College Kandy might remember Nimi teacher and how lovingly yet strictly she taught us some cool stuff. And this was one of that. So once we learned about making this model car, I came back home and I collected all these Maliban milk boxes and Highland milk boxes, all this stuff, and just stored them in a spare room. And I thought I could give them a second life and turn them into cars like this. So what I was doing was called upcycling, right? Giving value to something which I would usually consider waste. And back then I was really into planes and ships and all that. So much so that I even wanted to be an engineer. Now, this was before I found out that I was bad at math. But at that time what I found value was that I was giving life to this trash. Just a little bit before it was thrown away. And as you know, in Sri Lanka we don't have a great recycling infrastructure. So even for paper and cardboard, we would just toss them back in our houses and burn them at the back of our houses. And I think this is what most of us do here, right? It wasn't the best way to solve waste what I was doing when I was making all this stuff. But at least for a few months or a few years, I managed to upcycle these cardboard boxes and old newspapers. And when I look back, this to me was the first steps into the world of sustainable development and waste management. So when I started my studies as a university student in Utrecht University in global sustainability science, I was quite wide-eyed and optimistic about contributing to solve the climate change and energy issue. And I thought solar panels and wind turbines were the answer, and having these in the remote areas of the world will solve the energy issue and reduce our climate impact. Well, that was 19-year-old me, and at that point I was still unaware of the complexities of sustainable development. Then I entered university, and it took about 1.5 years or so for my outlook to change. So, what is sustainable development? So the textbook definition of sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without having to compromise the ability of the future generations to meet their needs. In addition, we have the 3 pillars of sustainability, which is the society, the environment, and the economy. However, I find this definition a bit dated and a bit limiting, and that we need to shift our view and our mentality right now. To me, what is sustainable development to me? So for me, sustainable development is to fundamentally change our way of life. So that is what we produce, how we produce it, how we manage our resources, the food we consume, and how we value what we value. Sustainable development isn't just about solving climate change. It is a way of life. Think about it. Literally everything around you. Every cup you drink from, every tasty morsel you eat, every drop of water you shower in, every phone and laptop you use, they all have embedded CO2 emissions and energy. So that's inside of them, they have CO2 emissions and energy which goes in to make them. And they all have resources which have to be extracted from our earth. And which is done by the blood, sweat and tears of the people who work in the mines and factories and the fields and so on. So, as you can see, there are multiple aspects we need to consider. And it's not just enough, if we are going to move towards sustainable development, that we need like environmental scientists or climate scientists. We need many other professions to contribute for solutions to this problem. Because we need to think about what we eat. We need new materials, which are not as harmful to the environment as the ones we use. We need new laws. We need to rethink our healthcare systems even, as the pandemic has shown us. So a question to the audience. I know I'm not here in person to deliver this speech, but a raise of hands would be nice. How many of you have heard about climate change? All right. And how many of you think it's an important issue? So around the same number of hands, I guess. But did you know that to solve climate change, it's not all about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and buying electric cars? To solve climate change is not just solving one problem. It requires solving many problems and a move towards a sustainable form of development. So why? Why isn't there a simple solution? Well, we actually spoke about it before. Because it's interlinked. Climate change is interlinked to various other problems we have, such as poverty, such as food security, our current methods of production and consumption, to name a few. And climate change is one such sustainability issue, and understanding its interconnectedness with other issues can open up ideas where we can work towards solving it. And this is why the world's nations gathered in 2015 at the United Nations to create the Sustainable Development Goals. And these goals are fundamental to fighting climate change and some of the key development problems in both the global north and the global south. And we have 17 SDGs, some of which are over here: ending poverty, ending hunger, gender equality, sustainable production and consumption, protecting life on land and underwater. And of course, you see, climate change. Climate change is not the only goal we have when we talk about sustainable development. Only by working towards the multitude of goals that we can create a new future for ourselves, where we can live without the fear of the harmful impacts of climate change. And now you might have also heard about this COP26, or Conference of Parties, which happened in Glasgow last November. And this is also to reiterate the urgency, the need for climate action, to stop warming, global warming, from going above 1.5 degrees Celsius, and to keep us in track of sustainable development. And this is why our world leaders meet at these COPs. And not just world leaders, but also many other parties. So moving back to some of my experiences so that you can get a better idea of how sustainability works in practice once it's taken apart. So I have been involved in several sustainability initiatives when I was a student. And for example, one of it, I have been involved in promoting the consumption of local and seasonal produce, which was initially sourced from organic farms around the city. And right now, we are actually working with a food rescue company who takes food from restaurants and warehouses which would have been thrown away, and they distribute it to different retailers like ourselves and also other small restaurants and stuff. And as you can see, they look perfectly all right. So why not save food waste? And another initiative I was part of was the thrift shop, where we circulate second-hand items and we help exchange students, especially who come here for a few months and they don't have much items. Maybe they need some furniture, maybe they need a coffee machine, some shoes. Boom, you can come to the thrift shop, take some stuff, maybe have a swap going on, and that promotes circularity. And then I've also been involved in plug-in events, which is running and collecting trash, and also made it to the papers, as you can see. And this was after one of the Pride festivals in the city. So this is how I was exposed to the multiple facets of sustainability: food, circularity, the governance, and for me the most important, the community building aspect. So now let's shift focus. Let's shift focus to Sri Lanka and let's look at a very recent issue which plagued our country and see how we can take apart sustainability in this particular problem. So think about the recent maritime disaster, the MV Express Pearl shipping accident. So this is a perfect example of how you can see sustainable development goals in action at a local scale. We're looking at mainly sustainable development goal 14, which is life underwater. And this is also a perfect example of the multifaceted nature of sustainability. So how can we see multiple facets? Well, let's take it one by one. Number one, we have the environmental aspect. Because of the shipping containers were leaking harmful chemicals and plastics, and this destroyed coral reefs and are harming marine animals. Number two, the social and economic aspect, cost, because the fishing communities who were dependent on the fish couldn't fish for some time because of the poisons which were in the water, and then this poisoned the fish and this couldn't be used for fishing anymore. And number three, the community aspect, because the plastic noodles which were on the beaches had to be collected, they had to be cleaned, and to this day they are being cleaned tirelessly by volunteers, by municipal authorities, and by the military. There's three aspects. Number four is another aspect which we don't really see in the news and all that. These are the marine protection laws we sign and the partnerships we have with other countries. This is a really important aspect in sustainability. And then one of the most important aspects of sustainability, in my opinion, and that is the community aspect. Breaking down the individualistic barriers we have in ourselves, getting to know the community, working with the community, and working for a common goal. And this has been accomplished tirelessly by volunteer communities who helped track the noodles along the beaches, who help track beach marine animals, and who are still to this day collecting the noodles, cleaning up our beaches. And I would say with major thanks to organizations like Ocean's Well and Pearl Protectors, they have managed to mobilize these locals to help do all these things. And in the end, community action and spreading knowledge is a very important part of what sustainability is. So where do I fit in this story of sustainable development? What do I contribute to it? So at the beginning, we started with me collecting trash. And indeed, that's still what I'm doing. And I'm mainly looking at plastics and how we can manage them better. So I'm looking at a chemical recycling technique in which we turn plastics back into oil, because plastics are made out of crude oil. So I want to see if we can extract a fuel or some sort of chemicals which are valuable and then put it back in the system. So we are getting stuff from the plastics instead of wasting it. And I want to see if this approach is environmentally feasible and if it's possible to replicate this across small scale in universities. So why is this important and how is it linked to SDGs? So if plastic waste is not recycled, it will continue to pollute the land and the oceans, impacting goal 14 and 15. And this will eventually lead to unsustainable cities and communities, impacting SDG 11. If we can recover chemicals or produce fuel from this plastic waste, we potentially have a circular economy. And this, where we can use plastic waste to create value-added products. This is really relevant to goal 12. And in the end, all of this is relevant to goal 13, which is climate action. We in Sri Lanka have seen the menace of plastic waste and what it can do to our environment, thanks to the recent MV Express Pearl accident. And I hope this was an awakening call to many people, and they started to be conscious about what they throw away. It certainly was for me. So, how do we summarize all this? As you see, sustainability is a multifaceted problem. There are many ways we can approach it. There are many problems you can solve. To solve this, we don't just need a bunch of environmental scientists. We need more. We need material scientists. We need engineers. We need fashion designers, artists, chefs, game developers, doctors, lawyers. So you see, the list goes on. Because we are all part of the problem. Therefore, we must all be part of the solution. So, what will your sustainability story be? Will it start from trash like mine? Or will it start from food? Or maybe art? Or simply a love for helping others? My friends, we might be the final generation who can prevent the catastrophic impacts of climate change. So go out there and seek your sustainability story. Mother Earth needs you. Thank you very much.